Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Phillies show with Ruben Amaro Jr., Jim Salisbury. I am Todd Zolecki. It is Monday, April 15th, 2024. Gentlemen, the Phillies split a weekend series against the Pirates. I think everybody, Phillies fans for sure went into this Sunday series finale feeling pretty good about their chances to take 3 out of 4. You have Zach Wheeler on the mound, who's been pitching great all year. Finally get a nice weather day, so you're thinking, man, maybe the bats finally get going a little bit. And then Zach Wheeler struggles a little bit, and the offense really doesn't get going. They lose, so they split that series finale, split the series against the Pirates, and so much talk continues about this offense, guys. Howard Eskin, our dear friend Howard Eskin, on Thursday is asking Rob Thompson about the lack of slug and are you going to slug enough this season? And I know you're going to make the playoffs, but are you going to slug enough? And Rob had a great response. He says, wait a second. So we're going to make the playoffs, but you don't know if we're going to slug or not, which I thought was great because it's so true. You can't have one without the other, in my opinion. This team's hitting like it is right now. Boy, it could be a rough second half. I personally think, like Rob Thompson, they will slug. But I want to ask you guys this question. What point of the season or how many at-bats into a season do you start to feel like we're getting a picture of what a player can do or what a team can do offensively? Jim, what about you? I mean, you've interviewed so many managers over the years. Ruben, I mean, you played. I mean, whoever wants to start, let's get your thoughts on that.
Go ahead, Ruben. I want to hear what you say. Then I'll copy it.
So I think it's just I think this is a product of a couple of things. I know that they wanted to get off to a good start and all that other business. They want to do things a little differently in spring training, which they did with the pitchers, but they didn't do so with the position players. And I think part of it, they have this sort of built-in excuse that they had a virus running through the clubhouse. It was pretty significant, obviously. Orion Kirkering just getting back from that. And it really backed guys up because they didn't really get on the field and start really doing their work until a little bit later in most cases, like, I don't know, 80% of the players. That said, I do not think that they got enough at-bats, enough competitive at-bats, enough playing time, enough chances to run the bases, enough. In this day and age, everybody wants to be more and more careful. The players are designing their own path for spring training. They all know what they're supposed to do to get ready. Well, guess what? They don't always all know what to do to get ready for spring training. I believe in my heart of hearts that you got to get somewhere between 60 and 80 at-bats in A games, not in the backfield games. You got to get between 60 and 80 at-bats, and you got to get multiple at-bats to start getting a rhythm, get your legs underneath you, get your eyes together, get your timing going. And you need the opportunities to get on the base paths, because if you don't do anything for 3 months, baseball is a weird game, man. You put your spikes on, it's different. It's different on your body. It's different on your eyes, different on your ability to react. There's all types of things that have to happen. That's why you play the games, to get ready to play a major league season. I think that there is such an emphasis on allowing players, I don't care whether they're veterans or young players, giving them their time to get ready. Well, guess what? There is a tried and true method of getting guys ready. And guess what it is? It's actually playing the games. Getting one at bat and getting 2 innings on the field and then sitting ain't cutting it. That's like a joke. Okay? A joke for me. Go out there and play 5 innings in your first game because they're all physically ready to do it. Go get ready and go play. And I know people, and I think this is epidemic. This is not just the Phillies or Rob Thompson or their staff or the medical staff. I think it is an epidemic thing that is happening in baseball, and people are not ready. I've watched a lot of baseball this year. It's ugly. There's not great baseball going on. You know who's playing well? The Dodgers. You know why they're playing well? Because the Dodgers had to play in Japan, and they started getting ready earlier. So here's my take. First of all, they weren't ready to play. Number one. Number two, I think it's going to take longer to find out what that team, what they are, because they're still going through spring training, in my mind. And I think in the past, I used to assess my team much better after about a month and a half, 6 weeks. Okay. May 15th to May 30th, somewhere in there, I knew what my team is. Now, because people don't play, and people don't really get ready and rolling and get enough reps, I don't know what teams you can't assess them until mid-June, because that's when you start to find out whether these guys, after 150 at-bats or 200 at-bats, that's when you find out what these guys really are and what kind of team you got. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it.
I mean, hearing the very interesting points, extremely interesting points, almost reminds me a little bit of what we're hearing about the NFL, how preseason has become irrelevant, and the first handful of games are like extended preseason. The reason you see some sloppy play, et cetera, guys still getting their legs, hear that all the time in the NFL. I would pick that out, or the new NFL, I should say, the way it's evolved with the de-emphasis of preseason. I'm wondering, they've played 16 games. Based on your observations, Ruben, that's just under 10% of the season. Do you think, I mean, if this is sort of an extended spring, and these 16 games, maybe you're a little bit fortunate to be at the mid-water mark, 8-8, while you're still getting your legs in, quote-unquote, extended spring training. Do you think those 16 games, these past 16 games have been good prep, or are we going to see them start to get going soon here?
I think they'll get better. They're too talented. There's too much ability. I mean, you got guys like Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Bohm, Stott. They're really talented, super talented players. I just don't know that they were in rhythm. Like, I believe that you have to go through different stages in spring training. You get your legs underneath you. You get your hands going with the bat. You get your timing going. You get hot. You get cold. You get hot again, and then the season starts. That's the rhythm of spring training for me, for everyday players. I've watched it too many times. I know how it works. If you get enough at bats and you get enough reps and you get enough times on the bases, they are not running the bases well. They're a better base running team than they are. They're not a superb running base running team, because sometimes they make some overly aggressive decisions as a team. But they're much better than what I've seen. And I know they can steal bases, but they're a better overall base running team when it comes to going first and third, making decisions, not getting picked off. But all those things you have to go through in spring training so that you're ready for them in the game. It just, there's not a lot of teams that can not a lot of players. You can't get 26 players all of a sudden and go, okay, here's a switch. We're going to flick it on and go play. There's only a few guys who can do that. Some guys can, some guys can't, but most cannot. And so I think that they're a better team than this. There's no question in my mind. I do think the pitching has been excellent. I really do. It's just not being supported by the rest of it.
And they've been sloppy. They've been sloppy in the field as well, which I think fits into what you're saying about reps and being ready to go. That's why I think very fortunate to be 8-8, 10% of the way into the season. And maybe we'll see to use the cliche, a better version of the Phillies soon. Anybody, Todd, surprise you slow start wise? I mean, Harper's off to a slow start. What's your take on that?
Yeah, Harper surprises me just because it's Bryce Harper. Bryson Stott's off to a slow start. He got off, I think last season, he opened with like a 16-game hitting streak. He's off to a slow start. Castellanos, of course, off to a slow start. It was interesting though. Last night, I'm thinking about this because there is so much from fans anyway. Not panic, but just they can't hit. And I went on. I looked up some players last night to see how they compare to other players in the big leagues. So like Bryce Harper, for instance, he has a 674 OPS. Guys just below him right now: Nolan Arenado, George Springer, Corbin Carroll, Alex Bregman, all having worse starts than Bryce Harper. Bryson Stott, 610 OPS. Randy Arozarena, Xander Bogaerts, Cody Bellinger, Paul Goldschmidt, all having worse starts. Nick Castellanos, who's right at the bottom. Julio Rodriguez is off to a worse start. Francisco Lindor is off to a worse start. So yeah, I feel like sometimes Phillies fans, certainly they look at everything as it relates to the Phillies and don't necessarily realize that it's also going on elsewhere. So don't hit that panic button yet. But Ruben, it's funny. While you were talking about spring training at bats and you said 60 to 80, I looked it up. Your head might explode here. But
25.
Bryson Stott led the Phillies this spring in at bats, 55 at bats.
Thank you.
Yes. Rojas, at one point, I thought he was going to finish with 80. He only finished with 53. You know, every other everyday player for the Phillies had fewer than 50 at bats this spring. Not a lot, not a lot. A lot of those guys.
So I think what you would hear from the hitting coach and from Rob is, well, they got a bunch of plate appearances and at bats in the minor leagues when they stayed back. They got and they got. It is not the same. It's not the same. There is no motivation. You're just seeing pitches. It's just eyewash, I believe. And I don't care if people get pissed off at me or not. You have to play baseball to be ready to play baseball. In no other sport can you practice and be able to translate practice into the game. You have to play the games to develop. That's why they have minor leagues. That's why they're supposed to play a lot. Now that's another whole story. I don't understand how they're bringing guys to the major leagues after 475 plate appearances in the minors, and now they're coming to the big leagues. They're extraordinary athletes. I get it. It's wonderful. They're way better athletes than during my era. I totally get it. But you got to play the game. You got to play the game to learn the game. You got to play the game to experience all the things that have to be experienced in the game. Base running, situations, the panic you feel when you're in the field and you got to turn a double play with man on first and third and there's one out. That doesn't happen unless you're playing in a game. And then a major league game in terms of getting ready for a spring training major league season, you need to have those reps because you just can't cruise into it, man. It doesn't happen. I don't care how many seasons you played. I don't care if you're a 1-year veteran or a 30-year veteran. You have to play the games to get ready for the games. It's not like riding a bike.
And it's a long held truism. There is no substitute for game reps. No substitute. It comes down to me to the speed of everything. Everything's a little quicker, a little faster in a major league game setting, any professional top level game setting, and the intensity is different. And I want to ask you both, listening to Larry Anderson post game yesterday on the radio, he was wondering where the intensity was, not seeing enough intensity. He played the game for a long time. Very valid opinion in my estimation. You seeing enough intensity, or is it sometimes when you're just not getting on base, you lack the energy? When you're not hitting, you lack the energy. It doesn't look like you're showing intensity. It's that age-old question. What are you seeing, Todd?
Yeah, I always go back to Charlie Manuel had some of the best offenses in baseball when he was the manager. And I remember when they would go into ruts, people would say, Charlie, your team looks flat. And he goes, there's nobody on base. You're going to be flat. You're going to look flat. There's no action on the bases. So I never really know what to think about that. I do know that on Friday night, Bryce Harper took his helmet and beat the snot out of the bullpen dugout and couldn't quite fit the helmet back into the bin it goes in because he was smashing it so hard in there. So that's some intensity. That's some frustration. But yeah, I always think, like, if you're not on the bases, how do you show energy? And that's what Charlie always said. But Ruben, you might see something different than I don't see. I mean, do you see intensity there?
Oh, I agree. When you're not hitting, I mean, you look flat. I mean, you don't have things going on. You're not stealing bases. You're not doing things. I get that. That said, you've got a group of guys who've gone to the postseason. Everybody keeps saying the same thing, including me, all us pundits saying, it's a great ball club. It's a great ball club. It's a great ball club. It's a playoff team. It's a contender. It's a contender. You keep hearing. So naturally, you hear it in your ears as a player. You hear it in your mind. And there's some element of, I don't think they're doing this consciously. Like, we're just gonna toss the gloves out there and the bats and the balls and we'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's some human nature element of guys just going, everything's, and we've heard this, and it's probably true. Everybody calm down. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna get better, and it's probably true. But you just like to see that a little, you like to see them, being fine earlier. Be fine now. And I think that's part of what the fans are seeing, and maybe what you're seeing right now. These guys want to win. Believe me, they want to win. This is a good group of guys. I really do like these guys, and like the fact that they like each other and want to play with each other. But there is always some element of, like, we're gonna be okay.
And I agree. I think their track records and the talent on that team, they are going to be okay. I think patience. I mean, I know people don't exactly like that word, especially in Philadelphia. I think we view our team, our baseball team, through sometimes a football prism, and that's fine. But I do think, once Harper starts getting going, he's standing on second base, pumping his fist, and his uniform's dirty, and his sweat and his hair is flying all over the place. And Turner's running and getting on, but that stuff will crackle right through the dugout, and they'll get going. I think there's some frustration early, but certainly no panic in these quarters, at least for me.
One guy, Jim, you mentioned slow starts, and I forgot to mention him, and I think it's interesting because the Phillies made a point to go out and get him, is Whit Merrifield. He's really struggled, and not only has he struggled, he has not been hitting the ball hard at all. And, they signed him to a 1-year, $8 million deal because they wanted to provide some outfield depth. They wanted to, maybe platoon Brandon Marsh in left field, get Yohan Rojas off his feet, and just not seeing really good at bats from him. And to me, he's not key necessarily as like Castellanos or, the other everyday guys, but man, you signed him to give us some quality at bats and help platoon some guys. And, that's another guy I think worth watching, just not hitting the ball hard at all.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't gotten a ton of playing time either. No. But he's that becomes a catch-22. The way to get hot is see a bunch of pitches and hit the ball hard and have good at bats, and you need volume of at bats to get hot. It's very hard to be Del Unser and come off and square it up every time. Or come off the bench, but if Marsh keeps swinging it, it's going to become more of a conundrum. No.
Yeah, well, and that will bring up the question of what are you going to do with Yohan Rojas if he continues to have like okay at bats? I mean, it's nice to contribute, but we talked about it a lot. His aggressiveness. He didn't look real aggressive in a lot of his swings. Still hitting the ball really softly. He'll hit the ball hard a couple of times, but like the exit velocity, not great.
No.
But I go back, the thought process that I go back on with Merrifield, and I thought it was a great signing also. But the danger of that is this, and we lived it. I lived it as a GM, and I lived it as assistant GM. You have an everyday player who is now longer of tooth, and now he is relegated to a bench spot. Let me tell you, boys, it is a different world being off the bench and having rhythm, as Jim said, and being able to put together the at-bats you want to put together when you're not getting, I don't know, 30 at-bats a week at least, or 40. You ain't getting them, and he's not going to get them. And the only way he's really going to get them if he starts getting hot, and then Rob's going to be forced to put him in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a difficult thing. Who was the player that we signed? Alex Gonzalez, everyday player. We decided to try to get him to third base. He was playing shortstop every day, I think, with the Cubs. Is that them? I think it was the Cubs. We get him to play, every once in a while in a platoon situation. Was it Abraham Nunez we were going to platoon him with? I can't remember the player, but he was going to play every day. And now he's playing third base, but not playing every day. And he was terrible. And I liked Alex. And he was a good player, but he couldn't do it. And some players can't do it. Some players are used to playing, you got a routine, playing every day. And if they can do it, it does take them maybe a year or two to make that transition. Matt Carpenter, I think about. Matt Carpenter, everyday player, first baseman, all-star, could really rake. And then things started slowing up for him. Now he's a, DH / whatever. He's not the same player. It's hard. It's hard to have rhythm and to be that guy who can get off the bench. Lenny, not that many Lenny Harrises out there and can sit around and just, for 9 innings and go out there and whack one. It just doesn't happen. And that transition may take some time. I think he's athletic enough, good enough player, baseball player, all that stuff that he will finally make the adjustment. But it is an adjustment. And I think that that's something that he's, that the Phillies are shorted and he is dealing with.
We've talked a lot about Rojas, and Kevin Long said something on Friday afternoon. I was chatting with him about the slow start, and same thing. He's like, we're going to be fine. We haven't hit in the best weather. It's going to get it going. But I asked him specifically about Rojas since we've talked so much about him. And he said, I said, how's his mindset? His mindset's fine. I said, how's his mechanics? He goes, I'm not talking about his mechanics anymore. And he's not talking about his mechanics anymore. We want him just to go out there and compete. He says he's been tentative on the bases. He's been tentative on the field, in the outfield, and he's been tentative at the plate. So now it's no more mechanics time. It is now compete time. So and which is like dead on what you guys said. I think the last time we talked about him, you got to go into that batter's box just trying to compete. And they're at that point with Johan Rojas. We'll see if he can eventually get it going. In the next
that's been a consistent theme here on the Todd Pod. Don't overthink. Go out and react. And
right.
I mean, look at athletes these days. Look at an old team picture. There used to be like 3 coaches, 4 coaches. Now you got a dozen or so in every sport. It's hard. You wonder if these guys are getting over-engineered and just not reacting. So it's, maybe Rojas, just by reacting, will play better.
Yeah, I just think that there's too much information. There's too much.
Right.
Too much information. It's a hard enough game. Sometimes it's great to have some information, but I think they're just being fed different types of information. I think this is a global with baseball. This is a global thing, man. There's people who have been employed to do certain things in the game that were never necessary before, ever. And now I think that they think that the athletes are so much better and the game's being played in such a different way that you need all this other stuff. Well, guess what? At the end of the day, you got to see it. You got to hit it. When they hit the ball to you, you got to catch it. When you catch it, you got to throw it. When you're on the mound, you got to pitch it to a spot. It's really pretty simple. There's a lot more going on with your body and your mechanics and your biomechanics and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, it's still a game of baseball, and it can't be played in a robotic fashion, or you're not going to get baseball. You're not going to get the athleticism that these young men now have. And that's what you want. That's what you want. You want to see their athleticism play.
One thing that is not over-engineered is this podcast. Todd's microphone broke about a minute before we were going to start, and he's a gamer, man. He's carrying on.
I grind through.
Not only that, but Jim has now embarrassed me into getting everybody new equipment. So that's what I'm going to have to do, because he thinks I'm a bazillionaire, which is, of course, is a lie.
Yeah, making all that big coin.
But I'll tighten you up. You know, you poor babies. I'll tighten you up.
Mine should still be under warranty. I just bought this thing.
Just send me your text. You know, text me your addresses, and I'll have some entity sent to you sometime soon.
So today is April 15th. It's a great day on the baseball calendar. It's Jackie Robinson Day. And, I was blessed with a dad who loved baseball. And, not only did he get out in the yard and coach all that stuff, he taught me about baseball history and how important Jackie Robinson was. Suggested, I think when I was in like fourth grade, I do a book report on him. And I've always had great appreciation for Jackie Robinson. What does it mean to you, Todd? Jackie Robinson Day.
Boy, I'm going to say this about Jackie Robinson Day, because I was just thinking about this. I'm covering an event today at Citizens Bank Park. They are, and Ruben, are you a part of this event today?
Yes, I am.
Pioneers and Pinstripes. They're doing a very cool display at the ballpark. I believe it's in the Hall of Fame level. Some photos just in honoring of the African-American players that kind of paved the way in
all players of color.
All players of color, including your dad, Ruben Sr., John Kennedy, the first Phillies player. He will be have a permanent place now at Citizens Bank Park. And, it's just cool to see that. I think the Phillies do a really good job recognizing their history. That was one thing they had not necessarily recognized up until this point. Ruben, can you tell me a little bit more about it? Prep me for what I'm going to walk into today.
Yeah, well, I'm going to chat a little bit about it, and it's an honor to have been asked by the Phillies to talk a little bit about it. At some point, there's a whole lineup of folks that I think whose families and members of their families will talk about them. I don't know all the names. I don't have them in front of me. I probably should. That said, me and my brother will be there, sort of representing my father, my brother David. And, it is a big deal. It did take the Phillies a long time. Last team to have someone of color, basically, in a National League. I don't know if it was in a National League or
National League.
In all of baseball. To have someone of color play for them. And so that's not great. But that said, it happened, and it was a long time ago. But there was an influx of, particularly of Latin American players. You start thinking about some of the players that came and played. Cookie Rojas was Cuban. You had Tony Taylor. You had my dad, Mexican and Cuban. You had, Tony Gonzalez. Tony Gonzalez was a player during the 60s. Was Vic Power? I think it was Vic Power. I think was he Puerto Rican? I think he was. Yeah. I don't have all the history. I wish I knew more of it, but it does mean a lot. And I have tons of stories about the fact that it was tough for people. It was tough for my dad in the minor leagues when he signed with the St. Louis Cardinals before he was traded over to the Phillies. He had a tough go, man. He played in the Dixie League, he played in Texas League, played in a bunch of leagues that he couldn't eat in the same places as his white counterparts. He could not stay in the same hotels. Not good, man. And he had to endure some stuff.
What about did he ever, like in the big leagues, did he early on when he made the big leagues?
Just in spring training. In spring training, there was an issue where I think it was Fort Harrison Hotel where the Phillies could not, they would not house people of color. And the Phillies basically had to stay out in Tampa, or they had to disperse. It's kind of shitty, but that's life. That's how it was then. Now Fort Harrison is run by the by the Scientologists. So, is it all that different? Anyway, we digress. But I will say that that it's meaningful for me and my family. I take a lot of pride in the fact that my dad was a man and a player of color, and it's an awesome thing to at least be honored and at least have the a little bit of the stories told.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to know your dad, and I mean, a great man, a great baseball man, and I think Jackie Robinson Day is one of the best things MLB has ever done because his impact really transcends baseball. And if you watch some of the documentaries, and just an amazing man, and it'll be good to see all those 42s out there. It's funny, I always, when I see 42, like on a hockey player or another sport, I always kind of wonder if he selected that number out of respect for Jackie Robinson. So it's just a really special day on the baseball calendar. I remember the year the Expos played down in Puerto Rico. They played like 3 or 4 series down in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. I went down to one of them, and there was like a clinic, baseball clinic run by the sons of Roberto Clemente.
Yes.
The sons of the Alomar boys were there, and Sharon Robinson was there. And I remember speaking with her and just thinking, wow, this is really cool. There's Roberto Clemente's boys. I'm talking to Sharon Robinson. It was like, if you appreciate baseball history and history in general, it was really special.
I mean, think about what Jackie Robinson had to endure, man. I mean, people talk about what Hank Aaron had to go through when he was getting to his 715. I mean, think about what Jackie Robinson had to deal with. I mean, he had a whole world on top of his shoulders. It's incredible.
And that's, if you ever visit the Negro League Museum in Kansas City, which I have. In fact, I went with Andrew McCutcheon and wrote a story about it. It was one of the thrills of my career going there. But the gentleman who runs the Negro Leagues Museum is a guy named Bob Kendrick, and he gives a great tour of the place. And he talks about why Jackie Robinson was, the guy that Branch Rickey wanted. And it had so much to do with his life experience and his character. And the fact that, yes, it was going to be a weight on him, but this was the guy that could handle it. I would recommend that visit to anyone.
And there was some Jackie was a really, really great player, but not the best black player there was. And there was other reasons that might have been better, but I think that you're right. I think that he had the mental makeup to be able to handle the pressures of being the guy.
He was a little bit older. And he was the guy that Branch Rickey tabbed, and thank God for him.
No doubt.
Well, guys, let's look ahead real quick before we get out of here.
Hey, can I say one thing about Andrew McCutcheon? How cool is that about Andrew hitting the 300th in a Phillies uniform, in a Pirates uniform at the Phillies?
Awesome.
Pretty fitting.
He was when you cover baseball and you cover a lot of guys. There are certain guys, when you look back at your career, or even you look back at a season, you say, I was really lucky to get to know that guy and cover that guy. Tomey, guys but Andrew McCutcheon is definitely one of those guys that I would bet makes every baseball writer's list. Just a quality human being, good guy, accountable, good player. I love watching the way he gets that bat head out. When he gets a hanger, boom, he knows how to use that bat head still.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, when you see him walk through the clubhouse, there's a presence about him, right? I mean, just he has some gravitas about him when you see him out in the field, in the dugout, in the clubhouse. So the Phillies, let's look ahead. Phillies, this is a great opportunity for the Phillies. We've talked a lot about slow starts and getting things rolling. Man, this is the week to get things rolling. And Ruben, I know you've said it. A lot of people say it. Anybody that puts on a big league uniform is a big leaguer. And I totally understand what you mean by that. But these are two teams. The Phillies opening a 3-game series tonight against the Rockies. They played the White Sox over the weekend, 3-game series. Rockies, third worst run differential in baseball. White Sox, worst run differential in baseball. Both teams have been getting pounded all season long. This is a week. This is the week for them to get rolling. Do you not agree?
I think it's a disaster. I will say this. I think it's a disaster if they don't win 4 games out of the 6. Simple.
Agree.
You're going disaster in the 3rd week of April?
Not disaster, but it would be a gross underachievement to not be 4 out of 6. I mean,
I
listen,
agree. You got to clean up on
this
these
is
guys.
not you got to play better baseball, and I know baseball's baseball, but
Right.
you got to take one game at a time. As you know, Todd, you can drop all of the cliches you want, but talent-wise, there's no contest here, and it needs to be enforced. They need to enforce their greatness on these 2 teams.
But even more so than the opponent and cleaning up on the opponent and making hay on a bad opponent, Phillies need to catch the ball better. Phillies need to run the bases better. Offense needs to thaw out. They need to get Zach Wheeler some support. There's things that they can take care of that are just specific to the Phillies. Kind of clean up your own shop before you worry about taking it out on somebody else. I mean, there's, regardless of the opponent, there's areas they need to get better. But hey, the fact of the matter is they're playing 2 weak teams. Just be careful with Charlie Blackmon. It seems like every time he comes to Citizens Bank Park, he breaks 3 chairs in right field.
He's a good player. He's been a good player for a long time. I know he's getting older, and but he can still do some damage outside. Everybody says, well, you can't hit other than in Colorado. That's not true.
Hits here.
The other guy you got to be scared, you got to be leery of is a kid named Nolan Jones, a Philadelphia product from Holy Ghost Prep, HGP, and from the Philly Bandits. Wonderful kid, tremendous athlete who had a phenomenal year last year. I mean, he was fifth in Rookie of the Year, or third or something crazy number. And he only played, 3/4 of the season or 2/3 of the season. This kid can do some things now. And he'll be in his hometown. He'll have 400,000 tickets. But he's a good player, man. You got to hold him down too. He's struggling a little bit. He's hitting like 200 right now, but they got to hold him down too. He can play.
Just a phenomenal baseball name. Nolan Jones. Is that a baseball name or what?
Tremendous.
That's a good name.
And you talk about being a wonderful, humble kid. I just digress a little bit on this kid. He is a spectacular kid. And if you stand next to him, you go, oh, my God, he's the largest human being I've ever seen. He's 6'5". He's all of it. With a beautiful swing, runs well, plays well in defense. Good player.
And isn't his brother like a hockey goalie, a professional hockey goalie? This is the annual hockey reference.
Not sure. Don't quote me.
I thought he was. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think you just want him to be a hockey.
You just want him to be.
Huh?
Well, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody for listening. Listen, we're going to get this audio fixed out. Ruben has promised us very expensive, high performance.
Very high def.
I mean, we're going to be like, you're going to feel like we're in the living room with you, in the car with you next time. So thanks everybody for listening and watching the Philly show. Talk to you later.
Smell you later, Ruben.
Smell ya.